I know a few of you already know the answer to this question. We talked about it earlier. Some of you have a good short-term memory. Some of you have forgotten that you have headphones in. I appreciate, I won't call you out personally, but if you have headphones in, please take them out now. What is the answer to this one? Square root of negative 25? Yes? 5i is correct. Now, can anybody explain why? Like, show me some work. Like, if all you had was the answer on the test we just took, I went and had to take off points. I warned you, gotta show work. So how would you show work? Can't just say, well, I know that's the answer. What would be the work? Yes?
Square root of negative 25 equal to the square root of 25
Yep.
times the square root of negative 1.
Perfect. That is showing the work. Everybody please write that. And then you can get to the final answer because the square root of 25 is 5. And then the square root of negative 1 is I. That showed a little work. Nice job. Okay, so some of your problems are that easy today. Some of them are that easy. Not many of them are that easy. But just make sure you understand that. Show a little work to show me why the square root of negative 100, I know what the answer is, but can you show the work for it? Now, some kids get all twisted up like square root of 10 times the square root of 10 times the square root of negative 1. You don't have to do that. You can just break it up into square root of 100 times the square root of negative 1, which would be 10i. There you go. There's your answer, 10i. Raise your hand if you had that one right. Okay, awesome. Here's where it gets a little more complicated. Last hour, only, I think it was 3 kids knew the answer to this one. Everybody write this negative 5. Plus and minus. You might be like, where would you ever have a plus or minus? X equals negative b plus or minus square root. That's where you'd have a plus or minus in that formula. Remember that? Quadratic formula. Of negative 25 all over 10. How would you simplify that? Well, I know some of you are like, well, duh, you just did that. It was 5i. Okay, good start. Finish simplifying. I'll pause for a second when you give that a try. All right. I know there's at least a few of you that got this right. I know that most of you knew that this was 5i. And then what now? Well, I'm going to rewrite the problem. And I want to give you the advice I've given you before. But and whenever you get stuck in this class, if you're like, I'm not sure what to do, at least consider my favorite saying on the wall here. If you can factor it, you should. Because that factors. And once it factors, things become more obvious on what to do. What's in both of those two? 5. Take the 5 out, and what do you have left? Well, some people do the factoring wrong. They think that this 5 just disappears. Well, it doesn't disappear. It leaves behind a negative 1 plus minus I. Now, how did that work? Because if you multiply it back out, look, 5 times negative 1 is negative 5. And the 5 times the I gives you the 5i. And then it's all over, and then be smart. If you can factor the 10, you should. 5 times 2. And then that shows you that these can cancel. Negative 1 plus and minus I all over 2. Raise your hand if you had that one right. Nice. Way better than last hour. I think, honestly, you guys are just a better class than last hour, apparently. You have to step up. Makes me think that nobody knows how to do this, but half your class knew how to do it. Okay, let's see if you can handle the really big step up then. A couple kids last hour knew this, but 2i plus 7 times 2i minus 3, simplify. Now, everybody knows how to FOIL, but I personally don't think FOIL is the best way, because I just want to show you, if you had this problem here with x squared plus 3x plus 1, and you were timesing it by x minus 7, do you get there is no FOIL for that? FOIL doesn't work. If you have to multiply a triple, a trinomial, times a binomial, there's no thing called FOIL for that. So really you should better think of it as this just distributes to both of them. This one gets times by both of them. And this last one gets times by both of them. And that there's 6 parts to your answer then, and things get added together. Well, how is that related to this? Only because I'm trying to say FOIL isn't the only way. It's not even the best way. The best way is to think of this as distributing twice. And there's 4 parts to your answer. Some things get added together. Get that simplified down as far as possible, and then compare with the kid next to you. I got 4i squared plus 8i minus 21. Raise your hand if you got that. Okay, awesome. What if I said you're all wrong? Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Yes?
Doesn't I squared equal -1?
Only one person in the room raised their hand. Yes, I squared is equal to -1. And if you're like, I didn't know that. How should I know that? Let me show you. What is I squared? Well, I squared is I times I, isn't it? And don't you know what I is? Square root of -1. The square root of -1. And if you multiply 2 things together that are both square roots, maybe you've never put this together before, but then the answer to that is -1. I'll give you an example like that. How about if I had the square root of 2 times the square root of 2? What do you get? 2. Because it's the square root of 4, which is 2. What if I had the square root of 7 times the square root of 7? What do you think that is? 7. See what I'm saying? All right, so maybe you've never noticed this. I didn't expect a lot of people to know it, but only one person knew it, that I squared is -1. So then how do you use that? Well, if I squared really is -1, then finish simplifying it, everybody. Take a second. Well, and that becomes -4, which goes with the -21. And now I got 8i, and then -4, -21 makes -25. And how many of you got to that? Awesome, and you're probably starting to realize it's a trap, because that's not it either. It's better, but that's not it. Anybody know what the right answer is? Okay, so these are called complex numbers for a reason. This isn't that big of a deal, but it's just a picky thing about math. Would you agree that we have picky things in life? Like you can't drive on the right side of the road. Or no, wait, depending on which country you're in. In our country, you're supposed to drive on the right side of the road. You can't just decide, I'm going to drive on the left side. It's kind of like a big deal. Why can't you drive on the one side? Well, because you'll die. Okay? Well, what about this? What's the picky thing here? You have to put the real number first. -25 is real. It goes first. 8i is imaginary. It goes second. It's just kind of like, well, when you're writing in Spanish, do you get that they have an upside down question mark at the beginning of a question? Okay, those of you that have taken Spanish know this. And it's kind of smart, because then it tells you this thing you're about to read is a question. You know ahead of time it's a question, instead of like getting to the end of the sentence and realizing, oh, that was a question. So anyway, In Spanish, you got to put an upside down question mark in front of a question. Well, here, it's just one of the rules. Imaginary numbers go last, real numbers go first. That's how you write it. Yeah, it's picky, but math rewards careful people. All right. So that was a lot of explanation so that you could be able to do a problem like this. I'll keep this one really short and sweet. If you understand this, you'll get this right. What's 4i times I plus 7? Don't say it. Do it. Let's make this a race. And you mark and say go. Raise your hand when you got it. All right, I got the first 4. You guys can stop raising your hand. All right. Okay, what'd you say it was?
I got 24.
All right. Did anybody else get 24? Ooh, a couple people did. All right. Literally only a couple people, though. Makes me nervous that might not be right, huh? How about this? Would you agree it's 4i squared? And then 4i times 7, which is 7 times 4 is 28. Do you feel like you still want to stick to that answer? Okay, all right. Yes?
Would it be -4 plus 28i?
All right. Would you agree that makes -1 and that makes this whole thing -4? -4 plus 28i, who had that answer? All right, so some of you who was actually part of that first 4 and had the right answer? All right, nice job. All right. So there's fast, and then there's actually fast and right. Okay, good. So, any questions? Is there a chance if you really think I did this wrong, you got to say something, because, I make mistakes every now and then. All right. So you put the real number first, you put the imaginary number last. All right, good. Now remember this. I squared is -1. If you just remember that, that's all you really have to know to be able to, make that kind of problem easy. And the next kind of problem. I'd like to know what I to the 7th is. I don't expect you to just memorize it, but I do expect you to use all the facts that I've just told you to make it make sense. Don't say it. Figure it out. This is not a race. The racing thing didn't work so well because 3 out of the 4 people that raised their hand were wrong. So let's just take our time. And if you're like, I don't even know what you're talking about, don't you have to memorize it? No. You can think of it as broken up. Who thinks that they have a way to explain it that everybody would get? Ainsley, what do you think you'd say?
Well, I to the 7 is just a bunch of I times I times I times I 7 times. And if we combine some of them, you can get a bunch of I squareds.
So that'd be I squared, and that'd be I squared, and that'd be I squared. Oh, I need one more I.
Yep.
And now what?
So each I squared is -1. And so you multiply all those together. And then you can also multiply it by the I at the end to get -1i.
-1i. Or just -i. Raise your hand if you had that one right. Wait, about half of you. All right. Now that you see how she did that, is it just going to be always is the answer to all the ones with the big power always -i? No, it's not. Would you please figure out what I to the 17th is? And you may want to find a way to do it faster, because you're not going to want to write out 17 i's. Use logic. Don't say it. Write down what you think the number is. I'm going to pause for a second. I'll give this a try. Okay, here's a fast way that you might like. Would you agree that I squared is the key thing? And if I put that to the 4th, that'd be like I to the 8th. Get what I'm doing here? What if I put it to the 7th? That would be like I to the 14th. 8th. That would be I to the 16th. And then I could just put one more I here, couldn't I? So then, isn't this just -1 to the 8th, which would be 1 So 1I, which is just I. The answer's I. Isn't that weird? I to the 17th is I. True. Who had it? All right, good. Okay. If you didn't have that kind, then on the test or on your homework, try to break it up into a bunch of I squareds. I mean, this would be probably, I'll give you one more. Let's say I did I to the 4th. Well, then it's just I squared and another I squared, and I'm done. And then those are all going to be negative ones. And if it had been I to the 5th, you just put one more I. These aren't that bad. Okay, so this one will be negative 1 times negative 1, which would be 1. So sometimes these turn into just 1. Sometimes they turn into negative 1. Sometimes they turn into I. Sometimes they turn into negative I. They're really weird. They kind of jump all over the place. All right, cool. Now, you know everything you need to know to be able to start your homework. First one is a Schoology quiz, and you go I to the 3rd, and we already did that one. Anybody have a short-term memory? What's I to the 3rd going to be? Negative 1. Just negative 1?
Times I.
Times I. Or negative 1I is what you really should put. Or what's even cleaner than that? Negative I. That's the answer for the first one. Now, when you get stumped, if you're like, I don't know how to do this, look to see if it'll factor. Because that's usually the thing that kids don't notice is, oh, I can factor this thing out, and then all of a sudden it simplifies down. Okay, so you got a Schoology quiz to work on, and now I'm going to give you a test back. Who in the room has not taken the test that we took yesterday? Anyone? So are you sure? This last hour, a kid sat there and got a chance to hear all kinds of answers and then said, oh, I haven't taken it yet. Is there anybody who has not taken the test? Please tell me now. This is yesterday's test. Okay, good. And that's all I got for you for the video for today.